to another Sundays with Sid. My name is Toiley T. It's a pleasure. It's Courtney. Hello. Salinas Brayden. Hello. Welcome in. Scrub, welcome in. Hello. Come on in. Come on in. Gather around. Kids Metzifer, welcome. Now listen. We have a wonderful, wonderful show here for you today. I'm so excited because today's guest is none other than the legendary Dita Von Teese. Yes, and as a special little tribute, I've worked something up. Hold on one second. All right, here we go. I hope you are ready. Ba-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. 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 Are we gonna get banned off of Instagram for this? Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only, the grandfather of puppetry, Sid Croft and Kelly. Ba-da-da-da.
Ladies and gentlemen, the unusual artistry of Sid Croft.
Oh, Toiley, I love you, Toiley. But I have a question. Did wipes cut into your business? Let me know because I'm really, really concerned. Personally, I love wipes. Okay, here we go. When I was a kid, oh my God, this is 80 years ago, I performed my act in what was called vaudeville theaters. And that was in the 40s. And vaudeville was sort of on the way out. And then along came a new sensation, and it was burlesque. And of course, that was for adults only. And my puppet act had a stripper in it, a marionette, and it put me in demand in burlesque theater. So I did so many years in burlesque, which actually, after many, many years, it went out.
You had to hang up your pasties?
Yeah, but listen to this. My guest today, and Toiley gave it away, you know, my guest today brought burlesque out with her spectacular shows that toured all over the world. But I got a surprise for all of you. She has a residency in a major hotel in Las Vegas. We're going to talk about that. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, the stunning, talented, beautiful Dita Von Teese. I can't wait. I just can't wait. Because Dita, when I first came on Instagram, Dita, oh, there you are. Oh my God, how cool. It's so great to see you, Dita. I was just saying, when I first started Instagram, you were one of my first guests. And I've been waiting for a couple of years to have you back. And thank you so, so much.
Oh, it's so nice to see you.
Well, thank you. Dita, I want to talk about Las Vegas for a moment. Because, you know, this is the Bally's Hotel. And the Bally's Hotel, I think, am I right, Dita, for about 30 years or even more, there was a show there that was the #1 show called Jubilee, and that was Don Arden.
For like 40 years. And before that, there was another Don Arden show called Hallelujah Hollywood. And
right.
So the home of all the great showgirl reviews.
And not only that, all the great effects on that stage. So when you told me that you are reopening that image image, the Jubilee, that you were bringing a show to Vegas, because I've seen you in person, and oh my God, I immediately said, Dita, you are going to kill there, because Vegas doesn't have anything like that now.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of impossible to make a show like that now, because the budgets would never go to all those feathers and rhinestones, staging. It's just like, you know, everything is pretty much like Cirque, and I just don't think, you know, the costume budget in the late 70s for Jubilee was like almost $4 million. So that's like $12 million in today's money. So try to imagine, and even if you wanted to make a show like that, if you even had the money, like a lot of the feathers, you know, these vintage costumes, you couldn't even really do it. You know, people are trying to kind of keep the spirit of the showgirl alive, but it was major. All of the budgets were spent on that back then. So it's kind of, it's impossible to really like recreate now, I think.
I haven't seen it in Vegas, but I'm going to Vegas soon. Oh, please, you know, I don't need a front seat, but the last time I saw Jubilee, I saw it many times, was in the light booth. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, we sat in the light booth and watched, you know, all the technicians up there working all those spectacular effects, and it was so much fun. Yeah.
Like 75 crew working on that show at one time, and I believe it was at first like 150 showgirls, and then it was sat at around 100, you know, and as the decades went by, they had to like shave it down, but 75 crew people alone to move around. Do you remember the Titanic?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And oh my God, and flooding the whole stage.
For people that don't know, Don Arden created all these great showgirl reviews, and he always had like a major disaster. So, you know, it's a topless. He'd love to do like some kind of dramatic disaster with fire and water. So there's a replica of the Titanic that would sink on the stage with like pyrotechnics and like something like 300 gallons of water every night across the stage. So the Titanic is still there, but we're not using it in the show, obviously. But it was a very different time of showbiz creation.
Yeah, you know, Don Arden did the Lido in Paris too, and I did the Lido for a year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I want to hear
No,
about that.
That was in the 50s. Oh my God. And Don Arden, you know, I worked with him on a big show that we were going to do in arenas, and it never happened. And it was the Olympic Follies, and the set in the middle of the arena was all crystal, and it had divers and skaters and, you know, every athletic thing you could think of.
Wow.
And oh God, I just looked at the presentation. I still have it, and it was just unbelievable. But again, the budget was so high that they didn't feel that, you know, well, I guess if they filled every seat, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was just a time where all these Vegas shows had to spend the money, and even a time probably when the time you're talking about where it was still kind of gangster run, and they had to, like, you know, spend as much as possible on those shows.
Yeah, Las Vegas was all mafia. When I first played there, actually I did before Judy Garland at the Flamingo, but I did appear in a hotel that didn't last too long before Judy Garland, and it was called, I can't even remember the name of the hotel, but I appeared there a couple of times. You know, for a puppet act to be in Las Vegas, that was unheard of.
Well, what about, it wasn't Poupée de Paris a Vegas?
I
want to hear about that because I'm obsessed with that show.
Yeah, Les Poupées de Paris was a takeoff on Jubilee, the Lido, the Folies Bergère, you know, with all the effects, but all done in miniature. And again, just what you said earlier, they wanted to bring Les Poupées de Paris back to the Mandalay Bay, but it would be the cost wise,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm talking about 60 years ago that Les Poupées de Paris ended up playing to millions of people. It was in the New York World's Fair, the San Antonio Fair, the Seattle World's Fair, Broadway, and it just went on, you know,
I would have
and
loved
it
to.
it ran for 9 years, you know, and Jubilee, that was Bob Mackie did all,
Bob Mackie and Pete
and
Menefee.
Pete Menefee, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was just,
All
And
those
Bob,
costumes in the show, all those Bob Mackie costumes in my show. It's
they
definitely
are,
Jubilee, but we're using a lot of the costumes, the vintage costumes.
wow.
Yeah,
How,
and of course all of the things that come out of the ceilings and up out of the floor, you know, like the little discs the showgirls would come down on, those are all still working, so we're using that. It took me a long time to not feel like my heart was gonna fly out of my chest when I came out of the ceiling, because it's, you probably remember, I had to ride it
oh,
every day until I could get used to the feeling. It was so scary.
coming out of the ceiling.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's, you know, it's a combination of, you know, burlesque and the Vegas showgirl were very different, but you know, and they're very different styles, I think. But my show is merging together the two and just capturing the spirit of that showgirls in Las Vegas moment. I have just as many show guys in the show as girls, so it's not a recreation of Jubilee, but my own, you know, my own spin on a Vegas show.
No, I know quite a few people that have already seen it, and I got to tell everybody, when you go to Vegas, don't walk. You have to run to get a ticket to see Dita, because it'll just take your breath away, because it was like it was so incredible, Dita, that you brought back, you know, burlesque and in your own vision, and I know that you've got, you even do magic in it, don't you?
I did a
Yeah.
little. I kind of left most of the magic out of Vegas because I was a little intimidated, because magic is such a big deal in Vegas. But I did do striptease and magic together in my my LA New Year's Eve shows. So I will probably revisit that again. But I didn't want to do it, like, you know, with all the magicians, because I had heard that one of the Cirque shows tried to make a magic
It
show and it was not.
didn't work. No,
No, so I
no, when you
do
got,
it lightly. And when I do things, it's like a little bit of just like a punchline or an afterthought. You know, I'm not trying to be a magician, but I love little surprises in the show. So
I told you about, I think the last time and only time that you were on, but it made me think back in the 50s, you know, I toured all over the world with my act, and I played Beirut, Lebanon, and in a club called the Kit Kat. And of course, you know, all the Arabs, especially the men, came to see uh, uh, the show there, because it was almost like a small little kind of Lido, you know. It was tits and ass, and so I got to tell you something. There was a stripper from uh, London, yeah, from England, and her name was Miss Pamela, and I named my stripper Miss Pamela in my act, but Miss Pamela did something, and we talked about it. You know, this is back in the 50s. You know, how many years ago that was, and we always talked about. I thought that you should bring it back. Uh, what she did, she traveled with a woman that made all of her spectacular gowns out of crepe paper, and they they were only good for each performance. So a new gown for every show.
super cheap.
Yeah,
Dirt cheap.
yeah,
It cost that much.
yeah, crepe paper. And she had this big, beautiful lounge in the middle of the stage that she sort of used as a sex object, you know. And what she did, hot music. She was a beautiful, beautiful lady. And she would rip pieces of her gown, you know, and place all the pieces until she was down to nude. And and then she would take all the pieces of crepe paper and make a big ball out of it and open it up, and it was a huge
Oh
rose.
my God.
And that's the way her act ended. And I'll never forget because she said to me, I had a stripper, and the big deal was a puppet, a marionette. And the marionette took off 9 pieces of clothing, but actually took it off and put it down. You know, it was very, very technically, it was, you know, I prayed a lot that it was going to
Yeah,
work every performance
I can imagine.
because I had to take a string and let it go so she could walk away from that garment, you know, and go to the next piece. And so uh, at the very end, she did all the bumps and grinds, and my music was always incredible. You know, it was original and it was better than the act, my music. And so when at the end, she would just take her bra off and they would black out. And Miss Pamela said, "Oh my God, do you know what I can't figure out how to do it, but I want my nipples to light up." And she said, "You could do that on the marionette, you know." And she had it all figured out. And we, before, during one day, we drilled in and put little flashlight light bulbs instead of the nipples and painted them with
Oh my God.
red nail polish and a little tiny wire that went up to my control with a little battery. And so then the puppet would take off her bra, they'd black out, and the nipples would just flash. Oh,
Oh,
I gotta tell you, it was like a
hilarious.
showstopper.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would love to have seen that. I have a Dita marionette that's in the show, but she wears pasties and she uses feather fans because it's so. I asked about doing the striptease and all the strings are so complicated, and I was like, okay, maybe another time. But I think it takes a very a masterful puppeteer to do that and figure all the outfits out. But so she just fan dances around a little bit in my Liberace moment in the Vegas show.
Because if you want me to come in
Love.
and give you
Yeah,
my secrets, because I'm too old to do my act anymore. I used to be the world's youngest puppeteer, and now I guess I could know the world's oldest puppeteer. And so that's my Miss Pamela. Oh, she was a trip.
Dita, you asked about the Lido. You wanted to hear more. What specifically do you want to hear from Sid about the Lido?
well, I mean, I've heard so many great stories about the Lido because I listened to this podcast that speaks to a lot of the former showgirls, and it's called Bluebells Forever because like they were Bluebells
Bluebells, yeah.
over from England, and they were the dancers for that show. They were Miss Bluebell's girls. So there's just so many great stories, and I love listening to this podcast of some of the Lido dancers from I think it was the 60s, right?
No, I was there in the 50s.
Okay, well,
I was there in
60s.
1952 until 53, and then I toured the Europe, and my last in 55 I was in London in a big show, another with a stripper. She wasn't very good, and but she was the star.
Yeah.
She was the star, and it was in Piccadilly, and the show was called Pink Champagne. And I want to talk about it in a minute about your champagne glass. I'm sure everybody saw it was with Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah. We did the visual video. I got a call from her one day saying, "Hey, will you be in my video and we'll both be in the glasses?" And of course, I was like delighted. She knew everything about burlesque and my career and everything. I was surprised. So, Yeah, it was a
How
fun.
fabulous.
My various on-screen moments with the glass over the years.
But getting back to the Lido, and Don Arden, we were supposed to open, just a Don Arden story. We were supposed to open in December before New Year's, and Christmas week. And what happened was
What year?
1952 or maybe 53. I was booked in there for a year. We were also told, the acts were told by the impresario of the Lido. And he gathered us all together before we opened. And he said, I want you to remember one thing. You're only here to let the girls change their costumes. And don't give me any shit, because you can be replaced in a second, and because the acts were just there so they could change, scenery and costumes. The nudes came from Germany, and they were they were stunning. Yeah, most of them. And then the Kessler sisters, they were twins, but oh my God. Oh, look at that.
Loves to give hugs. Can't keep it off me. Hands free.
Isn't that incredible? Oh my God. That's your new baby, right?
This is one of them. I've got 3. She's one of them.
Look at that face.
No.
Oh my God.
A little bit aggressive with their love, aren't you?
Yeah. Listening to every word you're saying.
You have cats, right?
I had 2 Persians, 2 brothers. I lost them about
2 years ago now.
Is it 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh, it seems
it feels like yesterday.
It really does. And they were brothers, and they were like dogs, waited at the door for me to come home, knew their names, and came exactly when you called them, and talked constantly. I don't know what the hell they were saying, but it sounded good. Okay, so back to Don Arden and what happened. He loves effects, and that's what you said earlier. And he had fireworks at the end of the show, real fireworks. Yeah, and the Lido's in the basement, and they didn't have they had the fireworks, but when we did it in rehearsal, the whole club became, you needed a machete to cut through the smoke. And so they had to close. Well, they weren't open. We were in rehearsal. They told us to take a couple of days off because they were going to try and figure out how to get rid of the smoke from the fireworks, because they didn't want to lose it. Then they had an ice rink that they built. The Lido used to be what they called a piscine or something. In French, it was a swimming pool, a huge swimming pool. Yeah, and they built this ice rink, and it came out electrically, from Backstage, but it was built too big. So when they tested it, it ruined the whole proscenium. It just, and one thing after another happened. We didn't open until the middle of January. It was like a disaster after it. But Don Arden was not, a very nice. He used to scream at the girls.
By all accounts, he was pretty vicious and
he
alcoholic. But still did amazing things. The show was amazing. But yeah, no one has. I have not heard anyone say anything good about him. And that Bluebells Forever podcast, they're all like, if they say something good, it's more like, well, he was right. My posture was really bad, and I still think of him now when I put my shoulders back. But it's not. He was tough. But what you're saying about building a show, though, you can imagine all the when you're something new and nobody's ever done for the
No,
first
no.
time. A lot of costs and a lot of things that can go wrong, you know. It's like, it can be very difficult being the, you know, first to try something new.
And what's really crazy about him is the effects. But they used to come to see the new edition of Les Poupées de Paris and steal my effects because, yeah, they had. We had a number. It was like not a jungle, but it was like the rainforest. Yeah, and it was all seen through a Venetian blind, Dita.
Yeah.
And the Venetian blind was the whole stage. And 2 years after that, they did the same thing with their girls. They had they had a thrust stage, so they had Venetian blinds on the side and the front. And then they just opened it, and the audience was looking through the Venetian blind. It was so spectacular in my show.
Are all of those amazing puppets from that show with the little can-can dancers and the showgirls? Do you still have any of those somewhere?
A lot of them are in our warehouse, yeah. But we had a huge auction at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and 3,000.
How did I miss it?
No, 3,000 people showed up from all over the world, and I sat. You know, the auctioneer was just. I was watching, you know, my puppets and my different props going, but we wanted to do it, you know, before we left the planet, and we needed the money too, and so, oh my God, to watch some of the puppets from my act, you know, my heart was just so broken, but I was so happy that someone else, you know, gave them.
I saw the wasn't there Liberace? I think I saw that in a friend's collection of like these friends that have vintage cars and all the kind of memorabilia. Yeah. And I think I saw that Liberace puppet in his collection.
No, it's a terrific. The marionettes were stunning.
Yeah.
You know, and the costumes, Bill Campbell. I found him at Westmore. It was a costume house. I maybe that's the wrong name, but I went to get an Elvis Presley, his actual jacket to wear on Halloween, and I went as Elvis Presley. And when I walked into the party, it was fabulous. The makeup and everybody said, "This is the greatest Liberace." They thought I was, you know. And so I didn't succeed with my Elvis Presley. I was Liberace for the rest of the night. What
I wanted to ask you about because I know you knew everyone in show business, so I'm thinking idols like Mae West, Marlena Dietrich, Lee, Sid Charisse. I feel like you've met everybody, but anyway, maybe you can give us some tidbits because I love hearing your stories about.
Yeah, because Dita, the reason I met so many people is just to get back to, and I know the fans go crazy every time I mention it because I mention it so many times. It was really the turning point of my whole career was touring a whole national tour with the biggest star at that time in the world, Judy Garland. And I was the opening act. And because of Judy Garland, wherever we played, Vegas, we were there for 6 weeks at the Flamingo, sold out. The Greek Theater, we were there for 2 weeks, sold out. The Greek Theater, never, Neil Diamond or whoever, 2 nights maybe at the most. But we were there for 2 solid weeks, and every star in Hollywood came, so they had to see my act. Then Judy Garland had a party after the Greek Theater at her home in her backyard. And I was invited with a guest, but I didn't want to go with anybody because you know, my ego was like, oh, there's going to be every star on the planet there, and they're going to tell me how much they love my act. Or, you know, we always look for compliments, of course, you know. I mean, we work so hard for it. And so, and that actually happened that night. But Sid Charisse, that just talking about one huge star, her husband was Tony Martin, the famous singer. And I toured with him. So Sid Charisse they became like my parents, you know, because everywhere he appeared, I appeared with him for years. We played Vegas, the Desert Inn, and the Flamingo, and Liberace too. I toured with him for almost 2 years, and we played the Riviera and, you know, the Hilton Hotel, where we ended up doing Raquel Welch, her show, and in the world of Sid and Marty Krofft. And I got to tell you, at the end of her act, she flashed her naked body, just flashed it. You got to see nothing, you know. But so she goes down in history as a stripper for doing that. But all those other people I either work with, you know, Gene Kelly and all those people, I work with them somewhere, you know, and or I met them through doing my act. In 1950, you're going to love this. And I was in a show in New York, and it was next to Radio City Music Hall, and it was called Howdy Mr. Ice. It was Sonia Henny's ice show, and it was considered like a Broadway show. 150 people in the cast. Unbelievable. The sister theater of Radio City with, you know, all the effects and all that stuff. And so after I closed at the Lido, I was offered just to replace an act. I don't remember if I did 2 or 3 or 4 performances. There was a juggling act in it, and it was Michael Todd's Peep Show at the Winter Garden. Remember? And the star of Michael Todd's Peep Show was Lily Christine. She was the cat lady, right? Isn't that what they called her? Yeah. Huge, huge, huge star, burlesque star. And there was a huge scandal in that show. And all the girls, and, you know, I mean, in those days, they had a cast of maybe 75 to 100 people. Yeah, you know, always. Because dancers used to make $35 a week on Broadway. That's what a dancer got. Yeah. And so I replaced this juggling act because they got injured. And the girls, there was a big number where the whole stage was like a huge bathtub. And all the girls were in a bubble bath. And they were all nude, right? And what happened was they went on strike because the chemical in the bubble bath turned their pubic hairs purple. And so all the girls, it was the big scandal on Broadway. They went on strike with signs in front of the Winter Garden on Broadway, you know, in New York. And so I'll never forget that. You know, that was Michael Todd. Michael Todd was married to Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah. And he was a big impresario, you know. Everything he did was just huge. Yeah, like had a party at Madison Square Garden. Who ever heard of him? No, how come they knew that many people that they had a huge party at Madison Square Garden? Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So, you know, you mentioning all those names, oh my God, it's just like, that's when there were real movie stars.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about Sid Charisse I met Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, you know,
Marlene
I mean,
Dietrich was another favorite of mine, of course, and was in Vegas a lot later in her career. But I wonder if you ever encountered her.
well, what happened was Jack Cole, the Jack Cole dancers, that was a troupe. They were very famous. And Jack Cole trained Marilyn Monroe how to walk. And every movie that she made, he was there for every single, he choreographed every movement. And he lived on Outpost on Laurel Canyon, way up. I wasn't driving then. I was living at the Chateau Marmont, and it would take about 45 minutes to an hour to walk from the chateau up to, unless you hitchhike, up to his house. Because I thought, oh my God, someday I want to have a house. Because I lived in hotels my whole career, you know, and ate crappy food and cheap hotels with bed bugs because I sent money home to my family. You know, I supported my whole family. And so I used to walk up there and she was always there, you know. And one day we walked in the gardens out of his house. I was with Marilyn Monroe, me and Marilyn, because she was so interested in my puppet act. You know, it was like, I don't think she ever saw it. No, she didn't. I don't think Marilyn Monroe ever saw my act, but she wanted to know more about it. And what made her curious that I was working places that, you know, for adults, you know, the Palmer House in Chicago or the, you know, New York, you know, I was in all these shows and, you know, the hotels that I played and, you know, it was like a puppet act. It was so rare to her. Yeah. You know, there was an act in vaudeville. You said the pasties, the little stripper has,
Yes.
why does she have pasties?
For me, it's just like you know, the pasties were brought into burlesque to, you know, comply with laws, but I don't know, I just like them as a, you know, signature of burlesque, you know, with the crystal. I love the glittering nipples with Swarovski crystal, I love the tassels and the decadence.
The
Kind of
tassels.
like it all. Certainly, like you know, I've performed at Crazy Horse totally topless before, and I've done that for sure. But there's something I just love about that. It's a little bit perverse too, like a little, you know,
No, it is. But there was an act in vaudeville that was the sensation of vaudeville, and it was a magic act, and he did levitation with his assistant, and because it was such a big hit, because all she had was pasties, and it had nothing to do with, you know, but people, this is before burlesque. Actually, I worked with that act. I can't even remember what his name was. I work. We're in New Orleans. This is a great story. We're in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, right? And we had Les Poupées de Paris there, and all the strip joints wanted to run us out of town because we were doing big business, you know. And next to us was a club, but the strippers worked on the bar and they got tips and everything. And there was a stripper, her name was Ming Lee from China. And we became friends. She always came over to see Les Poupées de Paris, you know, on her breaks. And so, because it was next door. So one day she asked me, with my mom and dad have never, they don't know what I do for a living. They're 70 something years old and they're coming from China. And would you just please bring them into my club and sit with them and just order them, you know, Shirley Temples or whatever. And of course, I said, but do they speak English? And she said, no, not a word. But I just ask you to please be with them because they're going to see me, to see what I do for a living for the first time. And they were, oh, they might have been 80 years old. They were, you know, not as old as me, but they were old. Okay. So anyway, I brought them into the club and it was real noisy and loud music and, you know, and Ming Lee was the star and, you know, and she did her strip like in front of you while you're sitting. And, but with this real hot music and this beautiful little Chinese girl. But when she was on stage, you know, she was like a volcano. And so, and people would put tips in her crotch and, oh my God. And after it was all over, we went backstage or whatever that backstage was behind the bar. And I said, why did you have what did they think? Because they were just in awe. And, oh, she said, I don't care because you just get the money and you run. I'll never forget, get the money and run. So that's I don't know how great that story is, but to me, it was.
Hearing about Bourbon Street during that era, there are a lot of great burlesque performers.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And there were some stars, you know, Lily St. Cyr and yeah. Mm-hmm. And hey, and of course I told you because you had me talk to her son. I work with Gypsy Rose Lee. Gypsy Rose Lee never took off anything. And she was the biggest burlesque star on the planet. She just took her gloves off.
Or a little strap or something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she would lower the strap.
Footage of her like in pasties, little flower pasties, because there's a little documentary that Eric Preminger, her son, did about her. And I watched some of that footage with him, and there's a little bit when she was really young, like in the 30s. But then as time went by, she just used, you know, she had other strippers in her act, and she would just, you know, present them or describe that, you know, like tell them kind of thing. She was very
I appeared with her in the Royal American Carnival because they would have shows, and I was supposed to tour the whole tour with her, but I only did 1 week. I don't know why, you know, they fired me. I don't know because maybe my stripper was pretty hot. and I was in a show in Atlantic City before it was supposed to go to Broadway, and it was called Borshcapades, and it was like all in Yiddish, and it was like it became a big hit on Broadway, and they fired me too because my act went over too big, and it had nothing to do with, you know,
being Yiddish.
Being Yiddish or what. It had nothing to do with the show, you know. No, it was a trip.
Dita, you had asked Sid about somebody. Was that Marlena Dietrich?
I asked about, I mean, I kind of rattled off a lot of names, but I did ask about Dietrich because I thought she was...
Dietrich. Okay. I knew her when she was, oh my God, in London because she worked at a club. I'll never forget her entrance. They had this huge litter, what do they call it? No, this big fan. There's a word for it that can cause a hurricane. You know,
ritters?
A ritter. I was going to say litter. And that's for a cat, you know. Okay. And so she made her entrance down this beautiful staircase, but she had a feathered coat down to the floor.
Swan's
Yeah,
down coat, I
the
think.
swan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this fan. Oh, I'll never forget that. Okay, and I met her. I went backstage because I was in a show too, and in London, and then I went to see her, and I was invited. We had front row seats. I see her at the Amundsen Theater in Los Angeles. She did a one woman, concert, and it was just so. She was already like maybe 80 years old, and it was just I couldn't sit there. I thought if I had a little tiny hammer and I just went boop and hit her in the cheek, that everything would just. She was so pulled back and she was holding on to the curtain, and she said, "I will now sing a very sad song," and it was like so bizarre. And then we went backstage to say hello to her, and they were pulling all the tapes off. This is not a nice story,
Well,
but
she was devoted to show business.
oh my God, yeah. And all that magic that was in London, that was years later, because that was in the 50s when I saw her. No, she was like such a jewel, for show business. And Mae West, that was another one.
Yes.
Mae West, I wanted her to record for the first Les Poupées de Paris, and I she was handled by the same agency. I was William Morris' office, and I called her agent, and he said, "No way. Do you have a couple of $100,000? Maybe she'll do it. She doesn't do anything. And I don't even want to ask her. And you want her to do it for nothing. I just got Maurice Chevalier and he recorded for me, and I needed Mae West for the finale. And so I called back his assistant, and I said, "Give me her phone number." "Oh, I can't do that." I said, "Come on, I'm not going to tell her." She was living down at the beach, Santa Monica, on the beach. She had a house there and the one on
Ravenswood.
Yeah, Ravenswood, which she owned, that building. I used to go there. She had seances there in the lobby, in the lobby. Okay, but just to get back, so he gives me her number, and I called, and the servant answered and said, "What's it about?" And I said, "Les Poupées de Paris." It hadn't opened yet. It was getting so much publicity, unbelievable publicity. Hedda Hopper every day wrote something about it in her column. And she got on the phone. She was listening.
Mae West.
Yeah, Mae West. And she said, "Oh, and she was Mae West in real life too. That was that character."
Oh, you have to hear Sid do Mae West.
No.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Oh, it is not. And she said, "Well, I have a lot of appointments." And I said, "Well, I'm not in that much of a hurry. Can you pencil me in for weeks or even a month from now?" And she said, "Oh, well, what about 1:30?" It was already 11 o'clock. Yeah. So, oh my God, I didn't even know if there was a Mae West. And I heard it was a man in drag, and you heard all kinds of crazy Hollywood stories, and so I took Marty with me, my brother, because I was scared to death. I also called. She did the Academy Awards. She sang Baby It's Cold Outside with Rock Hudson. And so I didn't know Rock Hudson, but I knew somebody that really knew him well. And I talked to Rock Hudson, and he said, "Oh, bring a lunch. She's going to keep you waiting 3-4 hours, you know." And so I get to the house. They didn't like, the servant didn't like that I brought someone. So they sat them in the corner, and I sat in this love seat. That's where I was told to sit. And I could see the staircase, and it was just minutes. And I saw this little woman, you know, she always wore bell bottoms and had big, big high shoes because she was tiny. And I saw her coming down the staircase. And she put her hand out. I didn't know, am I supposed to kiss it? Or she sat on the other side of the love seat. So, you know, she was already in her 70s or whatever, you know. So she had the long blonde hair. I guess it was a wig. And her boobs were like right at my face, old wrinkled boobs. And and she wanted to know all about the show. And she said, I already had a script, and I had a drawing, beautiful costume, diamond costume, with a big hat. And she said she wanted to know, the puppet was going to be taller than Maurice Chevalier puppet. And I said, well, usually a man is a few inches taller. No, she has to be taller than him, you know. And so she came to opening night, Mae West. And guess who her date was? Liberace.
Wow.
And she drove me. I put that together. Wow. We hit every paper in the world, you know.
Yes, I
United Press.
Photos before.
I'm sorry?
Photos of this meeting for anybody watching. You can Google the pictures, right?
Yeah. They're with Mae West and Liberace. Yeah. And she called me that day, and she said, I see he's got some gray hair, and I tell him to dye his hair for tonight. I said, I can't. He's a huge star, bigger than the Beatles. You know, I can't tell him to do that. She said, well, tell him to just eat a lot of watercress. I don't know what the hell that meant.
I love to give like advice like that. I have advice.
And then she called me and she said, what color is his limousine? Because I got to know what to wear. I said, it's probably black. She said, no, I got to know, you know, that I'm not wearing the wrong color. And she was a trip. I mean, Mae West showing up at a puppet show.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and the big attraction of Les Poupées, the whole audience came backstage after the show and saw all the girls in their dressing room, all nude, and they were getting dressed to leave the theater. Yeah. No, Les Poupées de Paris was a trip.
I would kill in that show.
Well, just to do it again, just like Jubilee, we're living in a total different world, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only way, you know, people go, oh, this kind of show should go on forever and ever. And it's like, well, it will if you start going to these kinds of shows and not just, you know, the other shows that are already wildly successful in Vegas, like the, you know, Cirque shows and whatnot.
All the Cirque shows.
Just, you know, more support to keep, to be able to pave the way for more shows like this, you know.
Yeah, but listen to me, everybody watching. That's the first thing you got to go see in Vegas at the Valley Hotel. Oh my God!
It's called the Horseshoe.
Oh,
so
also,
they changed the name, same building, of course, but they changed the name from Bally's to Horseshoe. It's still just on the Strip, just next to
Oh, it
Flamingo.
is? Oh, I
But
didn't know that.
rebranded and redone. But my room, the Jubilee Theater, is just as it
Stunning.
was.
That was a great showroom.
Yeah, it's
That's a great,
amazing.
great stage.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The stage is half the size of a
Yeah.
football field. It's It's monumental. It's like it's. I mean, it had to be. But we're using like some of the, when I came in there and agreed to do this show, and I basically, you know, was meant to do my show, and I said, well, where's all the showgirl costumes? And they said, well, they're downstairs, just locked up and archived. And I said, well, can I use them? Because, you know, the stage was just so big. I was
That you
thinking,
need
like,
big costumes.
you need you need big things. And then they had already started like chopping up the props, like a lot of the Jubilee props, like the staircase, the big gigantic staircase, which, you know, they have to do, as you know. Even like Folie Bergère, it's like those showgirl things, they built them in those theaters. There's no way to get them out. So they started like chopping things up, and I started taking things from the trash, like, no, I'm gonna use this. Don't throw that away. And I kind of refashioned a smaller version of the showgirl staircase with the old Jubilee staircase. So I kind of went in there and repurposed as much as I could. Yeah, but it was very heartbreaking. While we were rehearsing, I could hear them chainsawing things. But, you know, they have to make way for other shows, you know, like it's not necessarily my show, but, you know, all these theaters, they can't keep all of these things. Although they have told me they're keeping the Titanic, you know, it lives in the basement. Sometimes like on my Patreon and stuff, I'll do little tours and show everybody all the artifacts.
Let me ask you something, because we only have a couple of minutes left. Tell the audience, you know, the nights that you're there and how often.
Well, I'm getting ready. I've been on hiatus for the last month and a half, and I'm back February 15th. And it's select Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I'm going to add a few Wednesdays as well. And I'm this week or next week, I'm announcing some more new dates. So it's all on Ticketmaster, all on my Instagram. Show starts at 9 o'clock every night sharp, and mostly sharp.
One show a night?
Yes, just one show a night, because, you know, there's water, there's feathers, it's a lot of show.
Yeah.
It's about it's an hour and a half show. But yeah, it's you know, it's the only show of its kind in Las Vegas. The authenticity of these costumes, which are, you can only see costumes like this in museums now. It's the end of an era, and I'm very proud that we have them gracing the stage once again. And
I'm so proud that you came back on. I've been really waiting for this show, for you to join me again, you know. And you travel all over the world with your show. And and every time we reached out, you know, of course it's so hard to be working and do any take an hour of your time, you know, regardless of where you are, because wow, it takes a lot of energy to put a show like that on. But I also want to mention something, because I saw it on Instagram, your line of what your
line of clothes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And lingerie.
The lingerie. Everybody, tell them how to find that.
I know I'm not very good with my promotion, am I? I'm just well, I have a lingerie line I've had for about 13 years now, I guess, and it's available online, you know, easy returns and all that sort of thing, and then in some stores like Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom, but all the good stuff is online. So
they just tell them
what's your website?
Dita Von Teese lingerie.com. All the links are on my Instagram if you go there. And let's see, what else can I say? I have like my Patreon, which has a lot of like beauty tutorials and then videos from the shows and things like that, tours of my house and all that kind of stuff.
And your beautiful cats.
Yeah.
And the love that you have for cats. I do too.
Animals. I used to have dachshunds for like 18 years. I just love animals.
Oh,
I can't imagine.
so do I.
Here's another one that just came up. Oh, this is
Oh God, look at you. You're on Instagram. The whole world's looking at you right now.
He's got his own social media account too. He's got his own Instagram.
How cool. Hey Dita, thank you so much. A
Thank
big
you.
embrace. I love you so much.
I hope we can do another one of these, and I still want to, you know, when I need an idea for a new burlesque act, I'm just going to call you up and say, what should I do?
Oh no, I'm available for all those wonderful things. No, I love being creative. And your stripper, I'll give them all my secrets, because it must be a puppeteer working it.
Yeah, well, we have one of the dancers operating her.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I could teach. Yeah, just.
We need some lessons.
No, I'm wide open.
Okay.
Hey, Dita, thank you so much.
Thanks everybody for being here.
And good luck when the show reopens, and everybody.
Break a leg.
Yeah. No.
Thank
you so much, Dita. Bye. Oh my God, wasn't that cool? Isn't that? Oh, I waited years for her to come back on. Yeah.
2 years.
You know, and Kelly, oh, it's already 4 o'clock.
I know, it's 4 o'clock and it's pouring rain, but we didn't lose electricity. So that's
We
exciting.
lost electricity.
Right before the show.
2 minutes before the show. And so there might not have been a show. And then it came back on. We didn't get the big rain yet.
Well, it's coming. You missed the hurricane that I was watching while you were talking to Dita.
And for those people out there that joined Dita that don't know who the hell I am, call your mom or your grandma and
ask them who Sid Croft is.
And they'll tell you. You should do that every day anyway. I mean, call them. And the Valentine card.
Yes, we have Valentine's Day cards that are going out to all of our subscribers. Thank you to those who have subscribed.
Yes, thank you.
You will be getting a surprise because no one wants to know what they look like.
Oh,
they will be shipping out tomorrow and Tuesday. You'll be arriving prior to Valentine's Day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
You got to get a Valentine card.
It very much fits with today's discussion. It is fantastic.
It is just, it'll be the treasure, the Sid Croft treasure of all time. Or giggle, one or the other. Yeah. Okay, love you, everybody, and I'll see you next week. And next week's Super Bowl. Super Bowl. And, get ready. It's 4 o'clock. It's the Grammys. Oh, yeah. We got to go. The Grammys are at 5 o'clock. Let's go see what everybody's wearing. Yeah. Okay. Love you. See you next week. Super Bowl. Taylor Swift. That's all you care about? I got to see Taylor Swift. Okay. Thank you. Love you.